She found out on her wedding day, not the night before, not in a letter slipped under the door, on the altar, in front of everyone who had ever
Làm
watched
sao anh
her
có thể làm
build a
gì với em?
life with a man she
Em
thought
đang
she
mang thai
knew.
con của chúng ta.
The
Đừng làm
flowers
loạn
were
nữa.
still
Chúng ta...
fresh. The vows hadn't been spoken yet. And the woman standing in the doorway was wearing the same white roses Cara had hand-selected 3 months ago, because Marcus had told her to pick whatever she wanted, that it didn't matter, that he trusted her completely. If you've ever watched someone's world collapse in real time, you know it doesn't look like the movies. It doesn't look like anything at all. Drop a like and comment your city below. I want to see how far this story has traveled. The venue was called Harlow House, and it was exactly the kind of place that made people feel like their lives had finally arrived somewhere worth staying. Marble floors, cream-colored walls with gold inlay, chandeliers that cost more than most people's cars. The kind of place that didn't advertise because it didn't have to. You either knew someone who knew someone, or you didn't get through the door. Cara Whitfield had gotten through the door because of Marcus Vane. She stood in the bridal suite on the 3rd floor, in front of a floor-length mirror framed in dark oak, and she was trying to breathe. The dress was ivory chiffon, empire-waisted to accommodate the curve of her stomach, with a deep V of lace across her chest that had taken 3 fittings to get right. Her veil pooled behind her on the parquet floor. Her bouquet sat on the vanity, white roses, and tucked into the stems, a small light blue teddy bear with a satin ribbon, because in 4 months she was going to have a son, and she'd wanted him present at this, even in some small and symbolic way. Her maid of honor, Tessa, was behind her, pinning the last of Cara's hair into place. "You look..." Tessa started. "Don't. I was going to say you look like you're going to be sick." Cara's reflection stared back at her, pale, eyes too wide, the faintest tremor in her lower lip that she kept pressing flat with her teeth. "I'm fine." "You've said that 4 times in the last 20 minutes. And I'll say it 4 more times if you keep asking." Tessa set down the pins and moved around to face her. She was small and sharp-featured, with the kind of blunt concern that passed for affection between women who'd known each other long enough to skip the softness. "Talk to me." "There's nothing to talk about." "Cara." "Tessa." She met her friend's eyes in the mirror. "I'm marrying Marcus in 45 minutes. Whatever I'm feeling right now, it doesn't matter. It's just nerves." Tessa looked at her a moment too long, the way people do when they're deciding whether to push or let it go. She let it go. She picked up the pins again. Neither of them said anything for a while, and the silence had a particular weight to it, the kind that comes from 2 people both knowing something that only one of them is willing to name. The thing Cara wouldn't name was this. 3 weeks ago, she'd found a receipt. It was nothing dramatic. A restaurant receipt printed on thin thermal paper, folded and slipped into the breast pocket of a suit jacket she was hanging back up after the dry cleaner returned it. A place called Solace, a high-end restaurant on the east side of the city, a dinner for 2, a bottle of wine that cost $400, and a date that corresponded to a Tuesday night when Marcus had told her he was in Baltimore for a meeting. She hadn't said anything. She'd told herself it could be anything. A client dinner, an old friend, a business associate he hadn't mentioned because he didn't mention everything, because no one mentioned everything, because marriages, and they weren't even married yet, were they, weren't built on full disclosure of every meal and every movement. She'd folded the receipt back up and put it in the pocket of her own jeans and walked to the kitchen and made herself a cup of tea and stood at the window watching the street below and told herself that she was being paranoid. She'd almost believed it, almost was doing a lot of work these days. Marcus Vane was not a man you asked about receipts. That was part of the problem. He was 35 years old, and he occupied space in a way that most men never learned. That particular combination of stillness and pressure that made you understand, without being told, that certain conversations weren't going to happen. He was beautiful in the way that dangerous things often are, tall, dark-haired, a jaw like something carved, and across the full column of his throat and jaw and behind both ears, an intricate blackwork tattoo that she had traced with her fingertips 100 times in the dark, never fully understanding it, never asking what it meant, because some things about Marcus you absorbed rather than inquired about. She had met him at a fundraiser 18 months ago. She'd been there with a colleague. He'd been there alone, or seemingly alone, and he'd looked at her from across the room in a way that wasn't aggressive or hungry, but simply certain. as though he'd already made a decision and was waiting for her to catch up. They'd talked for 2 hours. He'd driven her home. He hadn't kissed her that night. He texted her the next morning, coffee, Thursday. That place on Meridian you mentioned. She hadn't mentioned any place on Meridian. She'd asked him about it later and he'd smiled with just the left corner of his mouth and said he paid attention. She should have asked harder questions then. She knew that now, in the bridal suite, with her baby pressing against her ribs and her veil dragging the floor and 43 minutes to go. What does Marcus Vane actually do? She knew the surface of it. Import-export, he said. Logistics, he said. Distribution networks. He had an office on the 14th floor of a building downtown and a team of people who handled whatever needed handling and a particular way of ending conversations about his work that was so smooth you didn't notice the door closing until it was already shut. She knew he had money. She knew he had connections. She knew that when things needed to happen, they happened, and that he never explained how. She knew that there were men who worked for him who weren't accountants or logistics coordinators. Men with eyes that moved before their heads did. Men who called him Mr. Vane and waited at the edges of rooms. She'd told herself she didn't need to know everything. That trust was a form of space you gave a person. That love didn't require full illumination of every dark corner. She was 27 years old and she was going to have a baby, and she was in a dress that cost $6,000, and she had 42 minutes left to keep believing in the version of her life she had built around a man who may or may not have had dinner with someone on a Tuesday night in Baltimore. "Okay," Tessa said, stepping back. "You're done. You look—" She stopped herself this time without being asked. "You're ready." Cara picked up the bouquet. The blue teddy bear swung gently from its ribbon. She walked to the door. The staircase at Harlow House was broad and curving, white marble with a wrought iron rail that was original to the building, which had been constructed in the 1920s as a private home for a railroad magnate. Cara descended it slowly, one hand on the railing, one hand cradling the underside of her stomach. Her heels were low because she wasn't taking chances. The baby had been active all morning, rolling and pressing as though he knew something was happening, as though the body he was inside was broadcasting something he was already trying to interpret. The lobby below was quiet. Most of the guests were already seated in the main hall. She could hear the string quartet through the closed double doors. Something slow and classical, a prelude. She had 6 minutes. She stopped at the bottom of the stairs. The lobby was empty except for one of the event coordinators, a young woman with a clipboard and an earpiece who gave her a practiced smile and said, "You look absolutely beautiful, Ms. Whitfield." And Cara said, "Thank you." And they both waited. Through the glass doors at the front of the venue, Cara could see the circular drive and the line of black cars, and the afternoon light coming in clean and white through the April sky. It was the kind of day that should have felt like a beginning. She saw the car pull in. It was a black sedan, the same make and model as several already parked in the drive, and she wouldn't have looked twice except that it stopped at an angle, not quite in a proper space, and the passenger door opened and a woman stepped out. And even from this distance, through glass, across 50 yards of gravel and lawn, Cara felt something cold move through her. The woman was wearing green. Not a subtle green, not a sage or an olive or a soft botanical shade, a vivid saturated emerald satin that caught the light like it was competing with it. A spaghetti-strap dress, fitted across the hips, with a neckline that was either bold or deliberate depending on how charitable you were feeling. She was carrying something, a bouquet of white roses, identical in composition to the one Cara was holding, and a champagne flute, which was an unusual thing to carry out of a car and up the steps of a wedding venue. Cara stood very still. The woman was young, 25, 26. Dark hair, long and glossy, worn down, a face that was assembled with the particular confidence of someone who had never had reason to doubt it. She wasn't looking around the way you did when you were arriving somewhere unfamiliar. She was walking with a direction. The event coordinator touched Cara's elbow. "Ms. Whitfield, we should—" "Who is that?" The coordinator looked up. Something shifted in her expression. Not quite recognition, but the flicker of something restrained. I'll need to check the guest list." She wasn't on the guest list. The coordinator said nothing. Cara looked at her. Was she on the guest list? I need to confirm. Look at me. Kara's voice was level, not loud, the kind of quiet that had weight behind it. Was that woman on the guest list? The coordinator's clipboard came up slightly, an involuntary shield. I'm going to find out right now. She turned, tapping her earpiece, murmuring into it. Cara didn't wait. She pushed through the side door, not the main entrance to the hall, but the service corridor. The one she'd walked twice during the venue walkthrough 6 weeks ago, because she'd been the kind of bride who walked through venues twice, who made notes, who prepared for contingencies she hadn't actually been able to imagine. And she moved down the corridor, past the catering staging area, past a rack of pressed linens, past a young server who pressed himself against the wall when he saw her coming, and she came out at the side entrance to the main hall, the door that opened behind the last row of chairs, and she stopped. The ceremony hadn't started. The guests were seated, 200 of them, in gilded chairs arranged in a horseshoe around the altar space, which was framed by white floral arrangements the height of a person. The string quartet was still playing. The officiant was at the front, adjusting his cuffs. And Marcus was there, at the altar, in his black tuxedo with the white shirt and the black bow tie. And his throat was right there, the tattoo she knew, the one she'd traced in the dark. And he was talking to someone. He was talking to her. The woman in the green dress had gotten here faster than should have been possible, unless she'd known exactly where to go, unless she'd walked in through the main entrance with the kind of confidence that doesn't ask permission, and she was standing 2 feet from Marcus at the altar, and his hand, his left hand, the one that was going to receive a ring in approximately 3 minutes, was on her waist, not at her side, not incidentally near, on her waist. A placement that was habitual, possessive, the placement of a hand that had been there before. Cara stood in the doorway and could not move. She was aware of her own breathing, the way it had gone shallow and strange, the way her vision had sharpened at the center and blurred at the periphery, like looking through something slightly wrong. She was aware of the weight in her hands, the bouquet, the teddy bear. She was aware of the baby, who had gone very still, as though he too was processing something. She watched Marcus lean toward the woman and say something close to her ear. She watched the woman laugh. Not loudly, not in a way that carried across the room, but a private laugh, the kind shared between people who have a private language. She watched his hand move slightly at her waist, a small adjustment, an unconscious claim. One of the guests in the back row turned and saw Cara standing in the doorway. Then another. Then a third. The ripple moved through the room in the silent, horrifying way that social awareness spreads, one person's shifted gaze catching the attention of the next. And the quartet kept playing, and Cara kept standing there, unable to make herself walk forward or backward or in any direction at all. And then Marcus turned. He saw her. For a single terrible second, his face did something she had never seen it do before. It broke. Not dramatically, not in the way of a man overcome with guilt and reaching for confession, but the control, that particular stillness he wore like armor, slipped, and beneath it was something raw and caught, and then it sealed back up again, smooth and composed, and he straightened, and his hand dropped from the woman's waist, and he said something to her in a tone too low to carry, and the woman in the green dress turned and looked at Cara and smiled. Not a polite smile, not an apologetic smile, not the smile of a person who has done something wrong and knows it. A smile like a door closing in your face. Cara's legs carried her forward before her mind gave permission. That was the thing about the body. It kept moving even when the mind had gone white. She walked up the center aisle of Harlow House, past 200 seated guests, past the sound of the string quartet finally stuttering to a stop, past the scrape of chair legs and the soft collective intake of breath from people who understood that they were witnessing something that wasn't supposed to happen. And she stopped at the end of the aisle, 10 feet from the altar, 10 feet from Marcus, 10 feet from the woman in green. The officiant had gone pale. Nobody spoke. Cara looked at Marcus. She looked at him the way you look at a person when you're recalculating everything you thought you knew, when you're running backward through 2 years of your life and finding the places where things don't line up, where the edges don't match, where the story breaks down. She looked at him for a long time. The blue teddy bear swung from the ribbon on her bouquet. "Tell me who she is," Cara said. Her voice was steady. It surprised her. Marcus's jaw was set. The tattoo on his throat moved as he swallowed. "Cara, tell me who she is." The woman in the green dress shifted slightly. The champagne flute caught the light from the chandeliers. She didn't look nervous. She didn't look sorry. She looked, if anything, entertained by the specific power dynamic she was standing inside of. "Her name is Sienna," she said, before Marcus could speak. Her voice was clear and unhurried, the voice of a woman who had rehearsed this moment or simply didn't care. "And I think you already know the answer to whatever question you're really trying to ask." Cara didn't look at Sienna. She kept her eyes on Marcus. "How long?" Cara said. "This isn't the place." "How long, Marcus?" He didn't answer. She took one step forward, just one. "The baby," she said. The words cost her something. She could feel the cost of them moving through her chest. "You know about the baby. You've known about the baby for 4 months, and you—" She stopped. Reset. Her hand moved to her stomach. "How long has she been— How long have you—" "Cara, listen to me." Marcus's voice dropped, not in apology but in management, in the particular register he used when he needed to contain a situation. "Not here. Not like this." "Where then? Where would you prefer?" "Step outside with me. 5 minutes. I can explain." "Don't!" The word came out sharp enough to cut. Several people in the front row flinched. "Don't tell me you can explain this. Don't tell me there's a version of this that I'm going to walk away from feeling okay about. Don't." She was shaking now, a fine motor tremor in her hands that she couldn't stop, and she hated it, hated that her body was advertising her pain in front of 200 witnesses. "I found the receipt 3 weeks ago, the restaurant, the Tuesday in Baltimore that wasn't Baltimore." Something moved in Marcus's face, an adjustment. "I told myself it was nothing," Cara said. "I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself you wouldn't—" She stopped again. Her throat was closing down. She forced it back open. "I told myself a lot of things. I was good at it." Sienna set her champagne flute on the altar table, gently, carefully, with the precision of a woman who didn't want to chip the glass. "Cara," she said, and her voice was different now. Still unhurried, but with a particular kind of attention underneath it. The way someone sounds when they're about to say something they've been holding a long time. "I'm 4 months pregnant, too." The room went completely silent. Cara heard her own heartbeat. She looked at Sienna for the first time. Really looked at her. And yes, now that she was looking, now that she wasn't filtering through shock and the green dress and the champagne flute, yes, the slight forward tilt of the shoulders, the way the satin dress lay across the abdomen, the way Sienna's hand had been hovering near her stomach for the last 2 minutes, not quite touching, not quite guarding, but there. "No," Cara said. It wasn't a denial. It was a refusal. The last refusal before collapse. Marcus put his hand out toward her. "Cara." She stepped back. The back of her heel caught the edge of the first altar step, and she might have fallen, would have fallen, except that a hand closed around her elbow from behind. Tessa. Somehow Tessa was there, Tessa who had followed her down the corridor, Tessa who had known, who had said nothing, who was saying nothing now and just holding her up. "Don't touch me," Cara said to Marcus. Quietly, without heat. The quietness of total devastation, which is different from anger because anger still has direction, and this had none. "Don't come near me right now." He stopped. 200 people held their breath. The chandeliers swung almost imperceptibly in the air that the HVAC system pushed through the room. Cara stood at the altar of Harlow House, in her ivory chiffon dress, with her bouquet, and her teddy bear, and her baby, and looked at the man she had handed 2 years of her life to and understood, with the specific clarity that only comes at the very bottom of something, that she had never really known what she was handing it to. The question was what she was going to do about it. She turned. She walked back up the aisle, past the 200 witnesses, past the stilled string quartet, past the event coordinator with the clipboard, and she pushed through the main doors and walked into the afternoon light and stood on the top step of Harlow House and breathed. Tessa came out behind her. They stood there without speaking. The gravel drive curved away below them. The black cars waited in a line. The city was somewhere beyond the manicured trees, going about its business, indifferent. "You knew," Cara said. Tessa didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was tight, the voice of someone paying a debt. "I heard something 2 weeks ago. I didn't know I didn't know if it was real, and I didn't want to." "You knew?" "Yes." Cara nodded, one slow nod, filed it. Behind them, through the closed doors of Harlow House, she could hear the muffled sound of 200 people beginning to talk at once. Her phone was in the bridal suite. She had no keys. She had a dress that cost $6,000 and a bouquet with a teddy bear and a baby who had started moving again, turning slowly inside her, and she was standing on the steps of a luxury wedding venue in April with no plan and no coat and no idea what came next. What came next, as it turned out, was a black car pulling into the drive. Not one of the waiting wedding cars, a different one, older, understated, with tinted windows. And it stopped at the base of the steps, and the window came down, and the man behind the wheel looked at her with eyes that were calm and careful, and said simply, "Ms. Whitfield, my name is Cole Dexter. I work for a man named Harlan Vane." He paused. "Marcus's father." Another pause. "He sent me to find you before the ceremony. I was too late." His expression didn't change. "He needs to speak with you, tonight. He says it's about more than the woman in the green dress." He reached over and opened the passenger door. "He says it's about what Marcus has been building, and what it's going to cost you if you stay." Cara stood on the steps in her wedding dress and looked at the open door. The baby pressed against her ribs. Behind her, the doors of Harlow House opened, and she heard Marcus's voice saying her name, coming closer, controlled but with something under the control now, something she'd never heard in him before. She had maybe 4 seconds to decide. She got in the car. The car smelled like leather and cigarette smoke, old smoke, the kind that had been absorbed into the fabric over years and wasn't going anywhere. Cole Dexter drove with both hands on the wheel and said nothing for the first 4 minutes, which Cara appreciated in the way you appreciate silence when your entire nervous system is still running a damage report. She sat with the bouquet in her lap. The teddy bear kept swinging. She tried to hold it still twice and given up. The city came through the windows in pieces, a stretch of commercial block, a light turning red, a woman pushing a stroller across a crosswalk without looking up. Normal Friday afternoon, the world doing its thing. She watched it and felt like someone watching a film in a language she used to speak. "Where are we going?" she said. Not a question exactly, more like a test of her own voice. "Midtown. 40-minute drive in this traffic." Cole's eyes stayed on the road. He was 50-something, compact, with a gray flat cut and the posture of a man who had spent decades in rooms where posture mattered. "Mr. Vane Sr. is at a property he keeps off the books. He'll explain everything." "Off the books?" "Yes." "That's supposed to be reassuring." Cole didn't answer. Cara looked out the window. "How long have you worked for him?" 11 years. "And Marcus?" "How long have you known Marcus?" "A beat. Since he was 22. "So you know him?" "I know him." "Then tell me who Sienna is." Cole's hand shifted slightly on the wheel, a small adjustment, barely visible. "That's not my information to give." "Cole." She said his name with a specific weight, the weight of a woman who has just survived something and is not in the mood for professional deference. "I'm sitting in this car in a wedding dress. I'm 4 months pregnant. I just found out the man I was about to marry has another pregnant woman. Whatever your loyalty structure is, I'd like you to consider whether this is the moment to maintain it." Silence. Then, "Sienna Drake. She's been with Marcus for about 2 years. "The same 2 years." Cara absorbed that. "Concurrent." "Yes." "He was with both of us at the same time, the entire time. As far as I understand it." "Yes." She looked down at her hands. They had stopped shaking, which surprised her. She would have expected them to keep shaking. Instead, they were very still, which felt like its own kind of warning. Is her pregnancy? Is it his?" "Mr. Vane Sr. believes so." "What does Marcus say?" Marcus hasn't said much about anything to his father lately. That's part of why you're here. She filed that, saved it. What's the rest of why I'm here? Cole glanced at her in the rearview mirror, a brief glance, evaluating. Harlan will explain. She stopped asking. They drove the rest of the way in silence, and Cara sat with the bouquet and the teddy bear and the low, constant pressure of her baby and tried to build something solid in her mind, some structure to stand on, because the ground had gone completely out from under her and she needed something. What she had. She was alive. She was unhurt. The baby was moving. She was in a car going somewhere. That was the whole inventory. She worked with it. The property was a brownstone on a narrow street that didn't appear on any map application she'd ever used, the kind of block that exists in every major city, tucked behind the visible geography, unremarked upon. Cole pulled into a space in front of it and killed the engine and got out and opened her door, and she got out too, holding the hem of her dress up off the sidewalk with one hand, which was both practical and absurd. The brownstone's front door opened before they reached it. The man standing in the doorway was 70 or close to it, built like something that had been compacted by decades of pressure into a denser version of itself. Silver-haired, clean-shaven, wearing a charcoal suit that hadn't come off a rack. His face was a ledger, every transaction written in it, nothing erased. He looked at Cara with eyes that were very dark and very still, and she had the unsettling sensation that he was not seeing her dress or her condition or her evident devastation, but something more specific, something he'd already calculated. "Miss Whitfield," Harlan Vane said. "Come inside." She followed him in. The interior was stripped of personality in a deliberate way. Clean furniture, no photographs, no clutter. A place that existed to function, not to feel like a home. He led her to a sitting room and gestured at a chair, and she sat because her feet hurt and her back hurt, and she was done performing composure while standing. Harlan sat across from her. Cole took a position near the door. "I want to apologize," Harlan said, "for what happened today. I sent Cole to find you before the ceremony. He was delayed." "By what?" "By Marcus, who anticipated that I might try to stop this and had someone slow Cole down. And he said it without particular emotion, the way you describe weather. My son anticipated me. It's not the first time." Cara looked at him. "Why would you want to stop the ceremony?" "Because you don't know what you are marrying into." He leaned forward slightly. "And because what Marcus is building is going to collapse. The only question is how many people are standing underneath it when it does." "What is he building?" Harlan was quiet for a moment. "You know he moves money." "He said import-export is." "He moves money," Harlan repeated, cutting through it without raising his voice. "For a consortium of interests that are not legal, not stable, and not forgiving of failure. He has been doing this for 4 years, expanding into territory that doesn't belong to him, making promises he cannot keep, and using the import business as a front that is thinner than he believes." He held her gaze. 3 weeks ago, 2 of the consortium's senior partners began asking questions about $7 million that moved through one of Marcus's subsidiary accounts and did not arrive where it was supposed to arrive. Cara was very still. "What happened to it?" "That is the question everyone is asking." "Does Marcus know where it is?" "Marcus says he doesn't." Harlan's expression didn't change. "I've been in this business for 40 years, Ms. Whitfield. When someone says they don't know where $7 million went, they are either telling the truth and therefore incompetent, or lying and therefore dangerous. In Marcus's case, I believe it is the latter, and I believe he moved that money himself to a position he controls, and I believe the people he moved it from will figure that out within the next 2 to 3 weeks. The room was very quiet. "Why are you telling me this?" Cara said. "Because your name is on 2 of the accounts." She heard the words. They took a moment to arrange themselves into meaning. "I'm sorry." "Marcus added you to 2 accounts 14 months ago. He told you they were investment vehicles. You signed the paperwork. You may not have read it carefully." She hadn't. She remembered the paperwork. A Friday evening, a notary, Marcus beside her. A stack of documents that he'd summarized in the confident, dismissive way he summarized things he didn't want her to spend too long examining. Just some restructuring, babe. Financial housekeeping. She'd trusted him. "He put my name on accounts connected to..." She stopped. "He used me as a layer," Harlan said. "Yes." If the consortium investigates, your name surfaces first. The baby moved. A slow, rolling movement, heel or fist, she couldn't tell. She pressed her hand flat against her side. I have to. She stood up, sat back down. I need a lawyer. I know someone. That's why you're here. Harlan leaned back in his chair, and for the first time, something that wasn't calculation moved across his face. Something older and more tired. I have spent 30 years trying to build something legitimate out of what my family built in the wrong ways. Marcus was supposed to be the clean generation. Instead, he went in the other direction, farther than I ever went, and he is going to take people down with him when it falls. People like me. People like you. And Sienna Drake. The name felt strange in her mouth. Is she on accounts too? Harlan's eyes shifted slightly. That's what I don't know yet. But you think so? I think Marcus is deliberate. I think he put both of you where he put you for reasons. Cara sat with that. With the specific nausea of being understood as a piece on someone else's board. She had thought she was a person in a relationship. She had thought she was loved, or something adjacent to loved, or at minimum chosen. She had not thought she was a layer of financial insulation between a man and his consequences. The baby, she said. Her voice didn't break, which cost her something she couldn't afford. Harlan waited. He knows about the baby. He came to appointments. He set up the nursery. He talked about names. She stopped. Was that strategic? The old man's face did something brief and human. I don't know, he said. I want to say no, but I've stopped being certain about what my son is capable of. The door opened. Cole stepped in, and his face had changed. The professional blankness was still there, but something underneath it had tightened. Sir, Marcus is outside. The room went cold. Harlan stood, straightened his jacket. How many? Him and 2 others, Dolan and the new one, Reyes. Did you let them in? Not yet. Harlan looked at Cara. Something passed between them that wasn't warmth, but was adjacent to it. 2 people who had independently arrived at the same position relative to the same man. You don't have to see him. There's a back way out. Cara thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. No, she said. Let him in. Marcus came through the front door the way he came through every door, like he'd already accounted for the room, like the space had been briefed before he arrived. He'd taken off the bow tie. The top button of the white shirt was open. The tattoo at his throat was visible in full, the black lines running up behind his ears, and he looked objectively like a man who had just left his own wedding disaster and hadn't lost his posture in the process, which was either impressive or horrifying depending on your relationship to him. He saw Cara and stopped. She was still sitting. She didn't stand. She didn't look away. You got in the car, he said. I got in the car. With his man. He glanced at his father. Something moved between them. Not affection, not quite hatred, but the compressed electricity of 2 people who had been doing damage to each other for a very long time. Dad? Marcus? You couldn't wait. I waited plenty. You didn't leave me another option. Marcus moved into the room. Cole shifted slightly near the door, but Marcus ignored him, the way you ignore furniture you're accounted for. He stopped a few feet from Cara and looked at her with an expression she didn't have a name for. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't defiance. It was something more complex, something that might have been genuine, which made it worse. Cara, I need to talk to you, without an audience. No. His jaw tightened. What he's told you. He told me about the accounts, she said. He told me you put my name on accounts. He told me about the $7 million. She watched his face. Did you take it? Silence. Marcus? Her voice was flat. Did you take it? It's more complicated than, did you take the money? He looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at his father. When he looked back at Cara, he had reset, his face composited back to something smoother, and she realized with a cold, settling clarity that this was who he was. The reset was not something he did in moments of stress. It was a reflex. It was structural. It was how he'd been every day she'd known him, and she had mistaken the smoothness for peace. There were debts, he said. Money that was owed to me that was being withheld. I took what was mine. From an account that had my name on it. Technically. Don't say technically to me. Cara, don't. She stood up. The bouquet was still in her hand and she set it down on the chair carefully and faced him. In her heels, she was 5'4" and he was 6'1" and she didn't care. You put my name on those accounts without explaining what they were. You were seeing Sienna Drake for the same 2 years you were with me. She's pregnant. I'm pregnant. You walked me into that venue today knowing all of this. She breathed, in and out, steady. What was the plan, Marcus? If the ceremony had gone through, if I hadn't seen her, what was the plan? He didn't answer. That's an answer, she said. I would have handled it. Handled what? Me? Her? The $7 million? The consortium? Her voice stayed level, but the words were coming faster. Which part were you going to handle? All of it. And the thing that was most frightening was that he believed it. She could hear it, the bedrock certainty of a man who had always handled things and had not yet encountered the limit of his own management. I always handle it. That's what I do. Not anymore. Harlan's voice from behind Marcus. Quiet. Inexorable. The Rello group sent someone this morning. They're not waiting another 3 weeks. They've moved the timeline up. They want answers by Thursday. Marcus turned. You don't know what you're talking about. Dolan, Harlan said, not to Marcus, but past him, toward the door where Cole stood. Tell him. Cole said, Rello sent Vargas. He was at the church, in the parking structure, watching. Marcus went very still. He was there, Harlan said, at your wedding, taking photographs of the guests, of you. A pause. Of her. The silence that followed was a different kind of silence. Cara felt it on her skin. They know about her, she said. Not a question. Cole nodded, once. They have her name. Harlan said it directly to Cara. I'm sorry, it was in the accounts. You're not a background figure anymore. As of this morning, you are a known associate of Marcus Vane in an active financial dispute with people who do not use arbitration. Cara looked at Marcus. He was looking at her with that expression she still couldn't name, and she understood now that she never would be able to, because it was the expression of a man looking at a consequence he genuinely hadn't intended and didn't know how to reverse. Not guilt, not love, not strategic calculation, something between all three that had no clean English word. How bad? She said to Harlan, without looking away from Marcus. On a real scale. How bad? Harlan was quiet. Tell me. There is a man named Vargas, Harlan said, who works for the Rello Group and who has resolved 3 previous disputes of this nature and who does not make a second visit. The sentence completed itself without any of them finishing it. Cara picked up her bouquet. I need to make a phone call, she said. Who are you calling? Marcus said. She looked at him, the teddy bear on his ribbon, the white roses already starting to close at the edges. Someone who isn't you. She walked toward the hallway. Marcus moved to follow her. Cole stepped in front of him. Not aggressively, not with any drama, just a body between one man and the direction he wanted to go. Marcus stopped. Cara kept walking. She found the hallway bathroom, small, clean, a single window above the sink, and she went inside and locked the door and stood with her back against it and let herself for exactly 90 seconds feel the full weight of all of it. The ceremony, Sienna's face, the accounts, Vargas in the parking structure, the photograph, her baby, who did not know any of this, who was just in there doing what babies do, growing, turning, waiting. 90 seconds. Then she ran the cold water and held her wrists under it and breathed. She had one contact she hadn't touched in 2 years. A woman named Petra Gallows, who had been a federal investigator before she left the government for private work, who Cara had met at a conference before Marcus, before any of this, who had given her a card and said, call me if you ever need someone who asks uncomfortable questions for a living. She had kept the card. She had transferred the number to every new phone without quite knowing why. She knew why now. She dialed. It rang twice. Gallows. Petra. It's Cara Whitfield. I don't know if you remember me. I remember you. A pause. You sound like you're in a bathroom. I am. Okay. The voice on the other end was steady and unsurprised, the voice of someone who received calls from bathrooms with some regularity. Talk to me. Cara talked. She stood in the bathroom of a brownstone that didn't appear on maps, and she laid it out, all of it. The accounts, the money, the names, Vargas, the photograph. In the clear, organized way she laid things out when she had to, when the situation required her to be competent, which she was, which she had always been, which Marcus had known and used and was going to stop being able to use starting right now. When she finished, Petra was quiet for 3 seconds. Then she said, "Don't go back into that room with Marcus Vane. I wasn't planning to. And don't go back to your apartment or any property he knows about." Another pause. "Is there someone you trust who has nothing to do with him?" Tessa's face, the pins, you knew. "Maybe," Cara said. "Find out. Tonight." Petra's voice dropped slightly. "Cara, the name Vargas, the man they sent. I know who that is. I need you to understand something. This stopped being about a wedding or a boyfriend about 6 hours ago." Cara looked at herself in the mirror above the sink. Her veil was half down, pinned on one side and loose on the other. Her mascara had tracked 2 thin lines under her eyes that she hadn't noticed until now. "I know," she said. "Do you have somewhere to go right now, in the next hour?" "I'll find somewhere." "Okay, I'm going to make 2 calls. Don't use that number again. This one. Do you have something to write with?" She didn't. She memorized the number Petra gave her instead, repeated it 3 times in her head until it sat. "One more thing," Petra said. "What?" "The other woman, Sienna Drake. Do you know where she is right now?" Cara hadn't thought about Sienna since the venue. She'd been too busy surviving the last hour to think about the woman who'd delivered the second grenade at the altar. "No," she said. "Still at the venue, maybe. Or, I don't know. Find out if you can, because if Vargas has your name from those accounts, he has hers too, and she may not know what she's standing in the middle of." The line went dead. Cara stood in the bathroom with the dead phone and the half-fallen veil and looked at the woman in the mirror for a moment longer than was useful. Then she unlocked the door. Marcus was in the hallway. Not Cole. Not Harlan. Marcus, alone, leaning against the opposite wall with his arms crossed and his jaw set and his eyes on the bathroom door like he'd been waiting, which he had been, because Marcus always waited in the place he knew you'd have to come back through. She stopped. They looked at each other. "Petra Gallows," he said. Her stomach dropped. "You think I don't know who you called?" It wasn't a question. "You think I don't know that number?" "How, because I know everything about your life, Cara." He said it without heat, without apology, as a simple statement of geography. "I've known for a long time, including that you kept her card." The hallway was narrow, 4 feet between them. "You had me watched," she said. "I had you protected." "That's not the same thing." "In my world it is." She looked at him, the tattoo, the open collar, the man she had slept next to for 20 months and made plans with and let herself believe was a foundation. "I'm leaving," she said. "I'm walking out of here, and I'm not going back to the apartment, and I'm not going to whatever place you'd suggest next, and if you try to stop me, I'm not going to stop you." He uncrossed his arms. His hands were at his sides, open, which was the most undefended she'd ever seen them. "I'm not going to stop you, Cara, but I need you to hear one thing." She waited. "Vargas doesn't know everything yet. He knows your name. He doesn't know your face. That gap closes fast. What Gallows told you, whatever she told you to do it tonight, not tomorrow." She stared at him. "Why are you—" "Because whatever I am," he said, and his voice dropped to something that wasn't performance. That was the first thing she'd heard from him today that didn't have a second layer. "You're carrying my son." The sentence landed in the narrow hallway and stayed there. Cara's jaw tightened. She walked past him. He didn't move to stop her. She went back into the sitting room, picked up her bouquet from the chair where she'd left it, looked at Harlan Vane once, and he looked back at her with something she'd call respect if she were being generous. And she walked to the front door and out into the street. The afternoon had gone to early evening. The streetlights were starting to come on, the sky at that particular blue that comes just before dark, and she stood on the sidewalk of a street that didn't appear on maps in a $6,000 dress with a teddy bear and her flowers, and she called the only other number she had memorized. It rang 4 times. "Cara?" Tessa's voice. Tight, guilty, watching for the direction of the blow. "Come get me," Cara said, "and don't tell anyone where you're going." A beat. "Okay," Tessa said. "Text me the address." "I can't text from this phone. Listen carefully." She read off the street name and the cross street from memory once, and Tessa repeated it back. And Cara said, "Don't stop anywhere on the way. Don't talk to Marcus. If he calls, don't answer." "Cara, what's happening? I'll explain when you get here." She paused. "And Tessa, I need you to find out where Sienna Drake went after the venue." Silence. "Why?" Tessa said slowly. "Because she's in the same trouble I'm in, and she doesn't know it yet. And I'm not—" She stopped, breathed. "I'm not leaving her in it, even if I wanted to. Which I'm not sure I don't." She hung up. She stood on the sidewalk and waited. And above her the city's lights were beginning to come on one by one. And somewhere across town a man named Vargas was doing whatever men named Vargas did in the hours between being sent and arriving. And Marcus Vane was standing in a brownstone hallway with his hands open and his mouth shut. And inside her son turned once, slowly, as though settling in for whatever came next. The streetlight above her flickered, held. Somewhere behind her the brownstone's front door opened, and she heard footsteps on the stoop. And she didn't turn around, and the footsteps stopped. And then Cole Dexter's voice said quietly from behind her, "Ms. Whitfield, there's something Harlan didn't tell you in the room." She didn't move. "What?" "The accounts Marcus put your name on." A pause. "There are 3 of them, not 2. She turned. Cole was standing on the top step, his face in the half-light, and he looked like a man who was paying a different kind of debt than Tessa had paid. Not guilt, not apology, but something closer to the look of a person who had been carrying information for too long and had finally found the right place to set it down. "The 3rd account," he said. "It was opened 8 months ago, after you got pregnant." He looked at her steadily. "And it has a different secondary name on it." She already knew. "Sienna Drake," she said. Cole nodded. "He put us both on the same account," Cara said. Not a question. Not quite outrage yet. Something colder than both. "He used both of us. At the same time. On the same financial instrument. And we never knew about each other." "Until today," Cole said. "Until today." The streetlight flickered again, and Cara Whitfield stood on a nameless street in a city that was about to become very dangerous, and understood that the worst thing Marcus Vane had done wasn't the affair, wasn't the lies, wasn't even the money. It was that he had positioned 2 women, both carrying his children, as identical shields between himself and the consequences of everything he'd built, and that the people coming for those consequences would not distinguish between them. Which meant Cara's only real option, the only move that protected her child and gave her any ground to stand on, required the cooperation of the one person in the world she had every reason to never speak to again. She needed Sienna Drake. And from the way Cole was looking at her, he already knew it too. Tessa arrived 22 minutes later in a gray Honda that had a cracked side mirror and a Pine air freshener hanging from the rear view. And when Cara got in, Tessa didn't say anything, just looked at her once. The dress, the veil, the bouquet still somehow in her hand, and pulled back into traffic. They drove 2 blocks before Tessa said, "Sienna Drake is at the Meridian Hotel, room 714. She checked in about an hour ago." Cara looked at her. "How do you know that?" "Because I called the venue coordinator and told her I was Sienna's assistant and needed to confirm her accommodation for the evening." A beat. "People believe what sounds plausible. You've been busy. I've been terrified in trying to be useful." Tessa's hands were tight on the wheel. "Are you going to tell me what's happening?" Cara told her. All of it, compressed and sequential. The way she'd told Petra. The way she was getting practiced at telling it. The accounts, the money, Vargas, the 3rd account, both names on it. She watched Tessa's face change as she listened, the way it moved through surprise and then something darker, and when Cara finished, Tessa was quiet for a long moment. "He used you both," Tessa said. "Financially. As cover." "Yes. And now there's a man with a photograph of you who works for people Marcus stole from. That's the shape of it." Tessa exhaled through her nose. "And you want to go talk to Sienna Drake." "I need to go talk to Sienna Drake." "Cara, she was standing at your altar with your groom, and she smiled at you like you were an inconvenience. I know what she did. And you want to go to her hotel." "I want to go to her hotel," Cara said, "because she's 4 months pregnant and her name is on the same account mine is on, and a man named Vargas has a photograph of her too, and she doesn't know any of that." She looked out the window. "What she did to me at that altar is a separate problem. It doesn't change what she's walking into." Tessa drove. "You're a better person than I am." "I'm not," Cara said. "I just can't afford to be the other kind right now." "What?" The Meridian Hotel was 14 stories of glass and brushed steel on the east side of downtown, the kind of hotel that attracted business travelers and people who needed to be somewhere that wasn't their actual life for a few days. The lobby was marble and low lighting and a jazz quartet playing in the bar that Cara could hear from the elevator bank. She'd changed in Tessa's car, in the back seat, contorting around her stomach to get out of the wedding dress and into a pair of Tessa's leggings and an oversized sweatshirt that Tessa kept in her trunk for the gym. The dress was folded on the back seat in a way that wasn't careful. The veil was still in there somewhere. The bouquet she'd left on the sidewalk outside the brownstone, finally, because she couldn't carry it anymore. The teddy bear and all. She'd kept the teddy bear. It was in the sweatshirt pocket now, a small blue weight against her hip. The elevator opened on 7, and she walked the corridor counting doors. 7:10, 7:12, 7:14. She knocked. Silence. She knocked again. "I'm not—" Sienna's voice, muffled, with an edge to it that wasn't the smug clarity from the altar. Something raw. "I'm not doing interviews." "I'm not press," Cara said. A longer silence. Then the sound of the chain coming off and the deadbolt turning, and the door opened 4 inches, and Sienna Drake looked at her through the gap. She'd taken off the green dress. She was in a hotel robe, white, belted at the waist. Her hair was down and less composed than it had been at the venue, and her face, without the performance of that smile, was younger and more specific. A real face, with shadows under the eyes that were either old or new. Cara couldn't tell. She looked at Cara. Cara looked at her. "You changed," Sienna said. "You want to open this door, or do you want to do this through a 4-inch gap?" Another beat. Then Sienna pulled the door open. Oh. The room was standard. King bed, desk, window overlooking the street below. Sienna's green dress was hung over the back of the desk chair with the precision of someone who'd been trained to take care of things. A room service tray sat on the desk, untouched. A glass of water on the nightstand, half empty. Sienna stood near the window with her arms crossed over her stomach. The gesture wasn't defensive. It was the same thing Cara had been doing all day without thinking, the unconscious bracket of both arms around the middle, protecting. "How did you find me?" Sienna said. "Does it matter?" "It matters to me. My friend called the venue, said she was your assistant." Cara watched Sienna process that, a brief tightening around the eyes. "No one followed you here. Or if they did, it wasn't me." "What does that mean?" Cara sat down in the desk chair because her back was done standing and looked up at Sienna. "It means there are people who might have an interest in where you went tonight. People who aren't Marcus and aren't me." Sienna's jaw shifted. "What people?" "Sit down," Cara said. "Please. What I need to tell you is going to take a few minutes, and I'd rather do it with both of us at the same level." Sienna didn't move for a moment. Then she sat on the edge of the bed, her feet flat on the floor, her back straight, her arms still crossed, watching Cara with eyes that hadn't fully decided what this was yet. Cara laid it out again. Condensed further this time, sharper. The accounts, Marcus's name, her name, Sienna's name, the money, Vargas, the photograph. She watched Sienna's face go through its changes and made herself watch without satisfaction. Because this wasn't satisfaction. This was two people getting the same diagnosis from different angles. When she finished, Sienna was quiet. "Show me," she said. "Show me proof." "I don't have documents yet. Harlan Vane told me." "Harlan Vane." Something flickered in Sienna's face. "You talked to Harlan." "He sent a car to the venue. He wanted to warn me before the ceremony and couldn't get there in time." "He sent a car." Sienna's voice had gone flat in a specific way. "When did he reach out to you to set that up? When did he first contact you?" Cara thought about it. "I don't know. Cole said he... Did Marcus know you'd talked to Harlan before today?" "No, I don't think so." Sienna looked at her for a long time. Something was moving behind her eyes, a calculation or a memory, and Cara had the sudden uncomfortable feeling that she was a step behind something she hadn't identified yet. "What?" Cara said. "Harlan Vane," Sienna said carefully, "reached out to me 6 weeks ago." Cara went still. "He had someone contact me through a mutual connection. Said he wanted to meet. Said it was about Marcus and that it was urgent." She paused. "I didn't go. I didn't trust it. I thought it was Marcus testing me." Another pause. "But he told the mutual connection one specific thing, which was that there were accounts with my name on them, and that I should get out." "He tried to warn you too," Cara said. 6 weeks ago." Sienna's eyes held hers. "Which is 2 weeks before the receipt you found in Marcus's jacket." The room rearranged itself around a new center of gravity. "He didn't just try to stop the wedding," Cara said slowly. "He's been trying to get both of us out for weeks." "Yes?" "Why?" Sienna looked at her hands. The first time she'd looked away. "That's the question I couldn't answer, which is why I didn't go." She looked back up. "Harlan Vane doesn't do anything out of conscience. If he wanted us out, it was because having us in was becoming a problem for him. Or because he didn't want the blowback. Same thing." They sat with that. The jazz from the bar downstairs was faintly audible through the floor, a soft persistence. "Sienna," Cara said. The name was strange to say to her face. "How long have you known about me?" A pause that lasted just long enough to be its own kind of answer. "About 8 months." 8 months? When she was pregnant, when she was 4 months in and Marcus was talking about names and setting up the nursery and telling her she was his whole life. "And you stayed." "And I stayed." Sienna's voice was undefended in a way that the altar smile had not been, flat and true. "I'm not going to make you feel better about that. I stayed because I thought..." She stopped, started again. "I thought he was going to choose." "He didn't." "No, he didn't." She looked at the window. "He was never going to choose. I understand that now. He doesn't choose because choosing means losing an option, and Marcus doesn't lose options." Cara thought about the hallway of the brownstone. Marcus's open hands. "You're carrying my son." She thought about the way he'd said it, what had been in it. Not love, not leverage, something indistinguishable between the two. Her phone buzzed, the new number Petra had given her. She answered it. "Change of location," Petra said without preamble. "Can you move in the next 10 minutes? "Why?" "Because the Meridian Hotel is on a list of Marcus Vane's known associate properties. I just pulled it." A beat. "He has a standing arrangement with the management. It's a place he sends people he wants to keep track of." Cara looked at Sienna. "Who booked you into this hotel?" she said. Sienna frowned. "Marcus's assistant sent me the reservation this morning. He said he told me to go there after the ceremony if there were complications." "If there were complications," Cara repeated. The word complications was doing enormous work. "We need to leave," Cara said, to both of them simultaneously. To Petra, "We're moving. Give me an address." Petra's address was a walk-up apartment in a neighborhood that hadn't been gentrified yet, on the 3rd floor of a building that smelled like old carpet and someone else's cooking. The woman who opened the door was 50, lean, with close-cropped gray hair and the eyes of someone who had made a career out of watching people lie. She looked at Cara first, then at Sienna behind her, and her expression did not change. "Both of you," she said. "Both of us," Cara said. "Is that a problem?" "It's a complication." Petra stepped back to let them in. "But so is everything tonight." The apartment was a workspace wearing the clothes of a living space, a kitchen table covered in a laptop, two external drives, and three phones in various states of charge. A whiteboard on the far wall with names and connecting lines in dry erase marker, several of which Cara recognized. A cot in the corner that had the look of frequent use. Petra pointed at the table. Sit. They sat, Cara on one side, Sienna on the other, which had a particular geometry to it that nobody acknowledged. Petra stood at the whiteboard. I've spent the last 2 hours pulling what I can on the Rello group and on Marcus Vane's financial structure. Here's where we are. She uncapped a marker. Marcus moved approximately $7.2 million through 3 subsidiary accounts over a 14-month period. The money originated with the Rello consortium as operating capital for a distribution network. Marcus diverted it in increments, small enough not to trigger automated flags, large enough to matter, into a holding structure that is technically registered to a shell company. She wrote the company name on the board. The shell company has 2 beneficial owners of record. She wrote 2 names, Cara Whitfield, Sienna Drake. The room was very quiet. He didn't just put our names on accounts, Cara said. He made us the owners of the shell that holds the diverted money. Yes. Petra capped the marker. On paper, Marcus Vane is a mid-level logistics coordinator. On paper, 2 women named Cara Whitfield and Sienna Drake own a company that receives $7.2 million from sources connected to organized financial crime. Sienna made a sound, not a word, just a sound, low and involuntary, the sound of a structure giving way. He set us up, Sienna said. Completely, Petra said. If the Rello group pursues this legally, and they have the option to, as a pressure play before anything else, your names are on the documents. Marcus's isn't, not directly. He's 3 layers removed. She looked at them both. He built 2 separate women into his exit strategy. Neither of you knew about the other. Neither of you knew what you were signing. I sign things, Sienna said. Her voice had gone strange and careful, the voice of someone examining a wound they haven't felt yet. He had me sign things. He said it was estate planning. He said he was protecting me and the baby. I know, Cara said, quietly, without heat. Because she had signed things too, and she knew how it had felt when she signed them, the particular trust she'd extended, and there was no version of this where either of them came out of that memory cleanly. Sienna looked at her. Something between them shifted. Not warmth, but the specific recognition of 2 people who have sustained identical injuries from the same instrument. What do we do? Sienna said. To Petra. Her voice had recovered its flatness, which Cara was beginning to understand was not coldness, but armor. You cooperate, Petra said. With me, and with the federal contacts I'm reaching out to tonight. You give me everything. Every document you signed, every communication from Marcus about finances, every account number, every name he mentioned in those conversations. You build a paper trail that shows you were deceived rather than complicit. She paused. And you do it fast, because if Vargas moves before we have something established... Her second phone buzzed on the table. She picked it up, read the screen, and went very still. Cara watched her face. What? Petra set the phone down. Vargas was spotted 40 minutes ago at a location in the East Precinct. She looked up. Near the brownstone where you met Harlan Vane. The blood left Cara's face. Harlan, she said. I don't know yet. Petra was already at her laptop. But if Vargas went there, if he tracked you to that address from the venue, then Harlan's exposure is... Her laptop chimed. She read the screen, her jaw tightened. Tell me, Cara said. Harlan Vane was taken to St. Augustine Medical 40 minutes ago. Petra's voice was flat and precise. Blunt force trauma. He's alive. He's in surgery. The room held its breath. Vargas did that, Sienna said. Not a question. Almost certainly. Petra closed the laptop. Which means the timeline just collapsed. Vargas doesn't make a move like that and then wait. He's establishing that the group is serious and that delay has consequences. She looked at both of them. He already has your names. He now knows you were at that address. He will connect the dots by morning. Cara pressed her hand flat against her stomach. The baby was still. She needed him to move. She needed that small, insistent signal that something in this night was still intact. He moved. Once. She exhaled. Marcus, Sienna said suddenly. Marcus needs to know about Harlan. Marcus already knows, Cara said. She was certain of it without knowing why. The way you're certain of things about people you've spent 2 years reading. He has people at that address. He'll know within the hour if he doesn't already. Then he'll run. Cara looked at her. That's what he does, Sienna said, and her voice had something in it now that wasn't armor. It was the ground beneath the armor, harder and more specific. When things collapse, Marcus moves. He has money positioned somewhere. He has a route. I've seen him prepare for it. She paused. I didn't understand what I was seeing at the time. I thought it was paranoia. He has a bag. He has documents that aren't his real documents. There's a property. Outside the city, about 90 minutes northwest. He's mentioned it twice and both times immediately changed the subject. Petra was writing. Address, road, name? He called it the lake house. I don't know a specific address. I know it's northwest, I know it's on water, and I know he went there twice in the last 3 months and said he was in Chicago. He said he was in Chicago twice, Cara said, and went there instead. Yes. Cara thought about the Tuesday in Baltimore, the receipt from Solace, the wine. She thought about all the geography that had been real and all the geography that had been something else. He's been moving things there, Cara said. Money, documents, whatever he needs. If that's true, Petra said, and if we can find the property, it changes everything. It gives us something to hand the federal contacts that establishes Marcus as the active party. She looked at Cara. Do you have any communications from him? Text messages, emails, anything where he mentioned a property, mentioned Rello, mentioned the accounts? On my phone, my regular phone, which is still in the bridal suite at Harlow House. Petra looked at Sienna. On my phone, Sienna said, which is here. She reached into the pocket of the coat she'd pulled on over the robe when they left the hotel and produced it. Petra took it, careful, holding it by the edges. I need your passcode. Sienna hesitated. The hesitation was brief, a single second, and what was in it was not obstruction, but the last reflex of privacy, the last small thing that had been hers alone. And then she said the code aloud, and Petra entered it and began moving through the phone with the systematic efficiency of someone who had done this many times. Cara watched Sienna while Petra worked. Sienna was sitting with her hands in her lap, her robe visible at the collar beneath the coat, and she was looking at the whiteboard with the shell company name and the 2 names written beneath it, and her face was doing something that Cara recognized, not crying, not shock, but the specific expression of a person reckoning with the extent to which they had been a fool, which is one of the most painful reckonings available to a human being because it is private and absolute and cannot be distributed. Sienna, Cara said. Sienna looked at her. You're not the only one who signed things she shouldn't have signed. Sienna's jaw moved. I knew more than you did. About what he was. Maybe. I knew he wasn't clean. I chose to stay because I thought... She stopped. It doesn't matter what I thought. It matters for the paperwork. It matters for what Petra needs to build. Cara held her gaze. And it matters because you're 4 months pregnant and you're in this room because someone sent you to a hotel that he controls, which means whatever you were to him, you've been moved to a category that he considers manageable. She let that land. We're the same category, you and me. That's where we are right now. Sienna looked at her for a long time. I'm sorry, Sienna said. About the altar. About how I was. I know. I thought I wanted him to choose, and I thought if I made it undeniable, I know what you thought. Cara meant it. She understood the calculus, the terrible logic of someone who has been in a situation too long and has finally decided to force it to a resolution, regardless of the damage. She didn't forgive it. She understood it, which was different, and which was going to have to be enough for right now. Petra looked up from the phone. Her expression had changed. What? Cara said. There's a text thread, Petra said. between Marcus and a contact listed as V. The room went silent. V, Sienna said slowly. The last message is from 3 days ago. Petra turned the phone toward them both. The message read, "She's confirmed for the 14th, both names on the filing, clean through the 30th. And the reply from V, and after the 30th. And Marcus, below that, after the 30th, it doesn't matter, we'll be gone." Cara read it twice. "We'll be gone." "V is Vargas," she said. "That's my read," Petra said. "Marcus was in contact with Vargas." The sentence felt like swallowing something sharp. He wasn't being hunted by the consortium. He was coordinating with them. Or coordinating with Vargas specifically, which may not be the same thing as coordinating with the whole consortium. Petra set the phone down. It's possible Vargas is running a side operation, using the consortium's grievance as cover to move against Marcus for his own reasons, with Marcus's knowledge, while the actual consortium believes Vargas is pursuing their interests. "They're working together," Sienna said. "Marcus and the man who's supposed to be after him." "And the 30th, Cara said. Her voice was very quiet. "What's on the 30th? Petra pulled up something on her laptop, turned it around. It was a financial filing, a transfer authorization. The shell company, their shell company, and a transfer date of the 30th, 8 days from now, of $7.2 million to an offshore account with a routing code Petra had already flagged. If this transfer executes, Petra said, your names are on it as the authorizing parties. The money moves offshore. Marcus and presumably Vargas take their cut of whatever arrangement they have, and 2 women whose names are on all the relevant documents are left holding the liability for a $7 million transfer to accounts connected to organized crime." Cara heard the words. She heard them very clearly. "She's confirmed for the 14th, both names on the filing, clean through the 30th. She was the confirmation. The wedding, today, this afternoon, the ceremony at Harlow House, was supposed to make her an official legal partner, married into the structure, name cemented. The wedding hadn't been a beginning. It had been the final signature. He planned the wedding, she said, to finalize the filing. Petra said nothing, which was its own confirmation. He needed me married to him to make the documentation cleaner. She sat very still. That's why today. That's why April. That's why he pushed for a date. She looked at her hands. I thought he was excited. I thought he wanted to be married before the baby. She stopped. He needed a wife on the filing, a legal spouse. And when Sienna showed up, Petra said carefully, and the ceremony collapsed, he lost the filing confirmation, Cara said, but the names are already on the documents. The transfer still executes on the 30th unless someone stops it. The 3 of them sat with the shape of it. He's going to run, Sienna said, before the 30th. He and Vargas, or just him. The transfer executes automatically. We take the liability. He's gone. Northwest, Cara said, the lake house. Sienna nodded. Petra closed the laptop. She looked at both of them with the expression of someone who has been in difficult rooms before and has learned to be honest in them. I can get a federal contact on the phone within the hour. I can hand them the phone, the text thread, the filing. That starts a process. She paused. But a process takes time, and the 30th is 8 days away. And Vargas is in this city tonight, and he heard an old man tonight, and he has both of your names and at least 1 photograph. She let that settle. What I need from you, she said, is something that gives us the lake house location. Because if we can put federal eyes on that property before Marcus moves, before he cleans it out and runs, the case builds itself. The money, the documents, the offshore routing, all of it. I don't know the exact location, Sienna said. His phone, Cara said suddenly. Everyone looked at her. Marcus's phone. His real one, not a burner. He has GPS history. He drove to that lake house twice in 3 months. The routes are in the phone. She looked at Petra. Can you get into it remotely? Not his personal device. Not legally, not quickly. Petra paused. But if someone could get physical access, Tessa, Cara said. Tessa, who was sitting in a gray Honda somewhere in this city, waiting to be useful, who had known about Sienna and said nothing and was paying that debt in whatever currency she had available. Tessa is with Marcus, Cara said. Or she can get to him. She's been around him for 2 years. She's not on his threat list. She reached for Petra's third phone. If she can get his phone, even for 5 minutes, it's dangerous, Petra said. Everything tonight is dangerous. Cara was already dialing. The question is which danger we choose. The phone rang once, twice. Tessa picked up. Where are you? Cara said. Outside your apartment building. I went back for your phone from the bridal suite, and then I didn't know where else to. Is Marcus there? A pause. His car is. I don't know if he's inside. Cara closed her eyes for 1 second. Opened them. Tessa, I need you to do something that's going to feel wrong. Cara, I need you to go up there and talk to him. I need you to get close enough to his phone to get me one piece of information. She paused. His GPS history. The lake house address, 90 minutes northwest on water. It'll be in his recent locations. Silence on the line. If I get caught, Tessa said slowly, I know. If he figures out what I'm doing, Kate, I know, Tessa. Cara's voice didn't break, but it was close, and she let it be close because Tessa deserved to hear that this cost something, that she understood what she was asking. I know what I'm asking. The silence stretched. Then Tessa said, Is this going to help you? Yes. Okay. A breath. Give me 20 minutes. The line went dead. Cara set the phone down on the table. Sienna was looking at her with an expression that had nothing of the altar in it, no smugness, no triumph, nothing performed. Just a person looking at another person who has just sent a friend into a dangerous room. She'll be okay, Sienna said. Whether she believed it or was offering it as a necessary fiction, Cara couldn't tell. She better be, Cara said, and meant it with everything left in her. Petra went back to her laptop. The whiteboard waited with its names and lines. Somewhere in the city, Tessa was driving toward a building where a man lived who had built 2 women into his exit plan and was 3 days from executing it. Cara sat with her hand on her stomach and waited. The 20 minutes passed. 19, 20, 21. At 23 minutes, the phone buzzed. A text, no words, just a set of GPS coordinates. And below that, one more line from Tessa. He knows you called me. Get out of wherever you are. Now. Petra was already standing. Sienna was on her feet. Cara looked at the coordinates on the screen. A lake, northwest, 90 minutes, real, and felt the last version of the plan she'd been building dissolve entirely, because Tessa had been made, which meant Marcus knew they had the location, which meant the lake house was no longer a trap they were setting, but a race they were running, and they were running it at 11:30 at night in a city where a man named Vargas had already put one person in surgery, and Cara Whitfield was 4 months pregnant and wearing a borrowed sweatshirt and had nothing left to lose except the one thing that made losing intolerable. Move, Petra said. They moved. Petra drove. Cara took the passenger seat. Sienna was in the back with Petra's second laptop open on her knees, feeding the GPS coordinates into a mapping application that Petra had installed and that didn't log its queries anywhere. The city moved past the windows in its nighttime version, lit and indifferent, full of people who were nowhere near any of this. 93 minutes northwest, the map said. If they left now. If traffic cooperated. Petra was on the phone within 45 seconds of clearing the building, talking to someone in a low-clipped voice that Cara caught pieces of. Rello, Vane, Lake Property, Federal Jurisdiction tonight, and then she hung up and said to the windshield, I have 2 contacts meeting us at the county line. They're not officially on this yet. They're coming as a personal courtesy. That means they observe. They don't move without cause. What constitutes cause? Cara said. Visible evidence of criminal activity at the property, documents, money, communications. A pause. Or a threat to safety. Define threat. Someone pointing something at someone. Petra's voice was flat and professional. That's when courtesy becomes jurisdiction. In the back seat, Sienna said, He'll be there already. If he left the apartment when Tessa texted, he has a 20-minute head start on us. He doesn't know we have the coordinates, Cara said. Tessa told us he knew she called you. He knows something. He might guess. He doesn't know what we know. He knows Tessa made contact. He doesn't know what she got. Cara turned to look at Sienna over the headrest. Is that right? She only had the phone for how long? Sienna shook her head. I don't know. Tessa. Cara picked up Petra's third phone and dialed. It rang, voicemail. She's not answering, Cara said. She might be with Marcus, Petra said. She might not be able to pick up. Or he has her phone. Nobody said anything to that. Cara put the phone in her lap and looked at the road unspooling ahead of them and made herself breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the slow, deliberate breathing she'd learned in the prenatal class she'd attended with Marcus, where he'd sat beside her being charming and present and had put his hand over hers during the relaxation exercise, and she had thought, I am lucky, I am so lucky, and had believed it the way you believe things that have been carefully constructed for you to believe. The baby moved, low and rolling. She pressed her hand to the place. Cara, Sienna said from the back seat. Her voice had something in it that wasn't fear but was adjacent. I need to tell you something about Marcus, about why he'd run to the lake house specifically. Tell me. There's a safe built into the property. He mentioned it once, not directly. He mentioned it the way he mentions things he doesn't mean to mention, which means the next sentence was something else entirely, and he never came back to it. But I know what I heard. She paused. He said he keeps originals there, the real documentation, not the shell company filings, not the account records we signed, the originals, his name, the consortium's names, the actual structure. Cara turned fully in her seat. He has documentation that exonerates us, she said. He has documentation that incriminates himself, which is the same thing. Why would he keep that? Sienna's expression was the expression of someone who has spent 2 years learning how a specific mind works. Insurance. Marcus doesn't destroy leverage, ever. He keeps it in a place only he can access because someday, if the consortium ever turned on him directly, he'd need something to trade. The originals are his exit from them, not from us. She looked at Cara steadily. If we can get to that safe before he clears it, we don't need to get to the safe, Petra said from the driver's seat. My contacts need to get to the safe, with a federal evidence team. That's the difference between this being a story you tell later and this being something that puts the right person in custody. Can your contacts move fast enough? Cara said. They'll be at the county line in 40 minutes. We stop, we brief them, they take lead on the property approach. Petra glanced at her. You and Sienna do not go onto that property. I need to be very clear about that. And if Marcus is already there cleaning it out, Sienna said, if he gets to the safe first. Petra was quiet for 3 seconds. Then we hope what Sienna found on her phone is enough. They drove. The city thinned behind them, and the highway opened up, and Petra pushed the car to 80 and held it there. The night was clear, no rain, a half moon doing something pale and unhelpful above the tree line. Cara watched the mile markers and felt the minutes pressing. 30 minutes out, her phone, Petra's third phone, buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Cole. Harlan is out of surgery. He's asking for you. He says, check the third account, not the shell. The third account under the Drake name has a separate cosigner you haven't found yet. Cara read it twice. Petra. Petra glanced at her. Cara read her the text. Silence. A third cosigner on the Drake account, Petra said. Who? Harlan doesn't say. He's in post-surgery recovery and he's texting through Cole to tell us to check an account, which means whoever it is matters enough that he thinks we need to know before we get to that property. Petra's jaw tightened. Call Cole back. Get the name. Cara dialed. Cole picked up on the second ring. The name, Cara said. Cole said, Dominic Reyes. In the front seat of the car, Petra made a sound, small and sharp. You know that name, Cara said to her. Reyes. Marcus's new man. He was at the brownstone with Marcus tonight. Petra's voice had gone very careful. Reyes is also, according to 2 different federal files I've looked at in the last 3 years, a known liaison for the Rello Consortium on the domestic side. Reyes works for both of them, Sienna said from the back seat. Her voice was very quiet. He works for Marcus and he works for Rello, which means he's not a side arrangement. He's the link. Petra moved the car to the left lane, accelerating. Marcus thinks Reyes is his man. Rello thinks Reyes is their asset, and Reyes is positioned on an account with Sienna's name, which means he has direct access to the transfer. He doesn't need Marcus to execute the 30th transfer, Cara said. No, he doesn't. Which means if Marcus runs, if Marcus clears out and disappears, the transfer still executes. Reyes handles it. And Marcus thinks he's running free, Sienna said, and he doesn't know that Reyes can move the money without him. The road moved under them. Marcus is being set up too, Cara said. She heard herself say it and felt the specific vertigo of a situation where the layers kept adding and every new layer revealed the floor you'd been standing on was sealing. Marcus stole from Rello, Petra said. Rello's response was not to send muscle. Their response was to send Reyes, who got close, who got on the account, who is now positioned to move the money on the 30th regardless of where Marcus is, and pin the entire structure on two women whose names are on every relevant document. While Marcus runs, Sienna said, thinking he won. While Vargas provides cover by making noise, Petra said, Harlan gets hit, you two run, everyone moves, and Reyes executes the transfer from somewhere very clean and very far away. Cara sat very still in the passenger seat at 80 miles an hour and understood that she had been, from the moment she found that receipt in the dry-clean jacket, not a person discovering a betrayal, but a piece moving on a board that had been set up around her without her knowledge, by people who had never needed her to understand it, who had only needed her to sign and to stay and to be present in the documentation when the moment came. Where is Reyes right now? She said. I don't know, Petra said. Can your contacts find out? I'll ask. She was already dialing with the hand not on the wheel. In the back seat, Sienna had gone quiet. Cara turned to look at her. Sienna was staring out the window at the dark tree line, her arms around her stomach, her face in the half-light reduced to its essentials, bone and shadow, and the expression of someone processing the full inventory of what they've walked into. You okay? Cara said. Sienna looked at her. Are you? No. Then we're the same. They held each other's gaze for a moment in the rear-view dark. Two women in a car going 90 minutes northwest toward a lake house and a safe, and whatever was going to happen when they got there. And the thing that moved between them wasn't friendship and wasn't forgiveness, but was something more durable than either. The specific solidarity of people who have been used by the same person for the same purpose and have ended up, improbably, in the same car. Petra hung up. Reyes was last seen at Marcus's apartment building 40 minutes ago. He left in a vehicle going northwest on the 9. Northwest. Same direction. He's going to the lake house, Sienna said. He's going to the lake house, Petra confirmed. And if he gets to that safe before Marcus does. Marcus doesn't know Reyes is coming, Cara said. He thinks Reyes is his man. Yes. So when they get to the same property at the same time, Petra said nothing. The implication was its own kind of sentence. Odd. They met the federal contacts at a rest stop 12 miles from the lake house coordinates. Two men in a gray SUV, both in plain clothes, both with the particular bearing of people who had done field work for long enough that it lived in their posture. Petra got out and talked to them for 4 minutes beside the SUV. Cara watched through the windshield. The men listened, asked 2 questions she couldn't hear, and then one of them made a call. Petra came back. They're moving on the property. They want us to stay here. No, Cara said. Petra looked at her. He has documentation in that safe that clears us. If something happens to it, if Reyes gets there first or if Marcus destroys it, my contacts will secure the property. Your contacts don't know the layout. They don't know where the safe is. Sienna does. Cara looked at Petra. You need us. I need you alive. Then keep us alive while we help you. Petra's jaw worked. You stay in the vehicle, both of you, until my contacts secure the building. Then, if it's clear, then Sienna describes the safe location and someone else goes in. Agreed, Cara said. Sienna said, agreed. Petra looked at them both with the expression of someone who doesn't fully believe the agreement but doesn't have time to renegotiate it. She went back to the SUV, more talking. Then she returned to the car, started it, and pulled back onto the highway with the gray SUV behind her. The lake house was visible from the road only as a light through the trees. A warm amber light in one lower window. The kind of light a house makes when someone is inside it and doesn't care who sees. The property access was a gravel road that turned off the county highway behind a rusted mailbox with no name on it, and Petra killed the headlights a quarter-mile out and navigated by the ambient light of the sky, which was just enough. She pulled over at the tree line 50 yards from the house. The gray SUV stopped behind her. Cara looked at the house through the windshield. It was a log and stone structure, broad and single-story at the front with a second level at the back that would face the lake. 2 vehicles in the unpaved drive. Marcus's black sedan and another car, darker, that she didn't recognize. Reyes. They were both already here. How long ago did they arrive? Petra said quietly, to herself more than anyone. The light in the lower window moved, someone passing in front of it. Then from inside the house, clearly audible even at 50 yards in the night silence, came the sound of something breaking. Cara's hand went to the door handle. No, Petra said, sharp and immediate. My contacts are moving. Stay. She got out. The 2 men from the SUV were already moving through the trees, low and fast, the way people move when they've trained for moving that way. Petra went after them. The car door closed. The tree line swallowed them. Cara sat. Sienna sat. From the house, another sound, lower, a voice, and then a silence that was worse than the sounds because of what it might contain. I can't sit here, Sienna said. I know. I know. Cara looked at the house, at the light in the window, at the second car in the drive that meant Reyes was inside and Marcus was inside, and they didn't know about each other's intentions. And somewhere in that house was a safe, with documents that were the difference between 2 pregnant women spending the next 3 years in legal destruction and 2 pregnant women walking out of this with their children and their names intact. She watched the window. The light moved again. 2 shadows this time, overlapping, and then one of them went lateral in a way that looked like a person being pushed, and then the light went out entirely. Cara, Sienna said. I see it. 30 seconds, 40. The front door opened. Marcus came out first. He was moving fast but not running. The controlled speed of a man who is managing something physical and doesn't want to give ground to panic. He was carrying a bag, dark canvas over one shoulder, and his jacket was gone, his white shirt dirty at the front, and even from 50 yards and in the dark, Cara could see that he was holding his left side with his right hand. He'd been hit. He got to his car. His keys. The bag went in. He was going to drive away and he had the safe contents and everything Petra's contacts were coming for was in that bag, and he was 10 seconds from being in that car. Cara was out of the car before she decided to be out of the car. Cara. Sienna's voice behind her. She was already moving across the gravel, her feet loud in the quiet, and Marcus looked up at the sound and went completely still. They looked at each other across 30 yards of dark gravel. He was breathing hard. The hand at his side pressed flat. The bag was at his feet. Get back in the car, he said. No. Cara, there's someone in that house who... I don't have time to... Give me the bag. His face did the thing it had done in the hallway of the brownstone. The control, slipping. You don't know what's in it. I know exactly what's in it. She kept walking toward him, her feet on the gravel, her hand on her stomach, the night air cold against her face, and her arms, and all of her. The originals. Your name. The real structure. The documentation that shows exactly who built the shell and who put whose name on it and why. She stopped 8 feet from him. Give me the bag, Marcus. If I give you that bag, he said, I have nothing. You have nothing anyway. Reyes is in that house. He's not your man. He works for Rello. He's been on the Drake account for months. He doesn't need you to execute the transfer. She watched his face change as each sentence landed. You were going to run, and he was going to move the money and leave us holding it, and he was going to let Rello believe you took it, and everyone was going to look for you instead of him. She paused. You built a trap and got caught in someone else's version of it. Marcus looked at her. The left side of his shirt was dark and wet, and she tried not to look at it directly because if she looked at it directly, she was going to feel something she didn't have room for right now. You're bleeding, she said. I know. How bad? I know. Marcus, how bad? It's... He stopped. His jaw moved. It's manageable. Give me the bag. Let Petra's contacts take you in. Tonight. You cooperate and you hand them Reyes and the transfer and the Relo structure and you give yourself a position. She held his gaze. It's the only move you have left. Behind her, she heard the crunch of Petra and the two contacts moving out of the tree line. She felt them coming without turning to look. Marcus looked past her at them. He looked back at her. He looked at her face in the dark, specifically, carefully, the way he had looked at her across the fundraiser room 18 months ago, when she'd thought it meant he was deciding something in her favor. Maybe it always meant he was deciding something. She just hadn't always known what the decision was for. The baby, he said, low, private. My baby, she said. Not a filing, not a layer. Mine. His hand came off his side. He held the bag out. She took it. It was heavier than she'd expected. She held it against her chest with both arms, the way she held everything now that mattered. Close, protected, hers to carry. Behind her, Petra's voice. Marcus Vane, I need you to keep your hands where I can see them. Marcus looked at Cara one last time. Something in his face that she still couldn't name and had stopped trying to. Then he raised his hands and turned slowly toward the contacts, and Petra moved past Cara toward him, and the two men went wide in opposite directions toward the house. And the night broke open into voices and movement, and the hard mechanical sound of professional authority being exercised. And from inside the lake house, through the open front door, came the sound of someone running. Reyes. One of Petra's contacts shouted something. The other went around the side of the house, fast, and there was a crash from the back, the lakeside, and then a splash. Silence. Then the contact's voice from the direction of the water. I've got him. Petra had Marcus against the side of his car, with a hand on his shoulder, and she was talking into her phone with the other hand, calling it in, making it real, and Marcus was standing with his palms flat on the roof and his head down and his bloody shirt soaking through, and the bag was in Cara's arms, and the safe in the house had already been opened and cleared because Marcus had been in there ahead of Reyes, and the documents were here, in this bag, in her arms. She stood in the gravel drive of the lake house on a Wednesday night in April with the weight of the originals against her chest, and the cold coming off the lake behind the house, and her son pressing against her ribs from the inside, steady and persistent and entirely indifferent to the logistics of everything that had just happened. The door of Petra's car opened and Sienna got out. She walked across the gravel and stopped beside Cara and looked at the scene in front of them. Marcus against the car, Petra on the phone, the lights starting to come on in the house as the contacts moved through it. She didn't say anything. She stood close enough that their arms nearly touched and watched the process of a plan dismantling itself into evidence. Is that it? Sienna said finally. Most of it, Cara said. Is it enough? Cara looked at the bag in her arms, heavy with everything Marcus had wanted to preserve, everything he'd driven 90 minutes to retrieve, everything that was now going to be opened by people whose job it was to read it and act on it. Petra will tell us. From the direction of the lake there was the sound of movement and the contact's voice, closer now. And then Reyes emerged from the side of the house with his hands behind his back and water dripping from his legs to his knees. And he looked across the drive at the scene, and his face was absolutely still in the way that faces are still when someone has assessed a situation and found no angle left in it. He looked at Cara. She looked back at him. He looked away first. Petra lowered her phone. She looked at Cara. Her expression was professional, but something underneath it had shifted. Not surprise, but the particular look of someone who has been in this work long enough to recognize when a night has gone differently than expected and has still somehow ended in the right place. I need that bag, Petra said. Cara handed it over. Petra unzipped it, looked inside, zipped it again. This is enough, she said. 3 words. This is enough. Cara exhaled. It came out longer than she expected, like she'd been holding it since the bridal suite, since the altar, since the hallway of a brownstone that didn't appear on maps, since all of it, and the exhale just kept going until it was done. Then her legs, which had been carrying her through 6 hours of this without asking for anything, began very quietly to shake. Sienna caught her elbow. Not dramatically. Not a rescue. Just a hand on an arm, a body beside a body, a basic steadying. "Okay," Cara said. "Okay," Sienna said. Across the drive, Marcus was being helped, not entirely gently, but not cruelly either, into the back of the gray SUV, his hand still pressed to his side, his face turned toward the lake. He didn't look at Cara again. She watched him go and felt nothing clean, not relief, not grief, not satisfaction. Something compound and unresolved and honest, which was probably the accurate response to the end of something that had never been what she thought it was. A siren, distant, growing. The county sheriff's department responding to Petra's call, lights beginning to color the tree line red and white. "They're going to want statements tonight," Petra said to both of them. "Both of you, as long as it takes." "I know," Cara said, "and there's going to be a process, weeks, months probably." Petra looked at her steadily. "But the transfer on the 30th gets frozen tonight. Your names come off the filing. It's going to take time to make that visible in every system it needs to be visible in, but it starts tonight." Cara nodded. "And Harlan?" she said. "His people are with him. He's stable." A pause. "He'll want to talk to you." "I know." She looked at the bag in Petra's hand. "Eventually." The sirens were close now. Sienna's hand was still on Cara's arm, and Cara realized she hadn't moved it, and that she hadn't moved away from it, and that they were standing in the gravel in the light of approaching headlights, like two people who had arrived somewhere they hadn't planned on arriving at and were still figuring out what to call it. "What do we do now?" Sienna said. Quietly, not to Petra, just to the air. Cara looked at the lake house, at the open front door with the light on inside now, the contacts moving through the rooms, at the place Marcus had chosen as his last position. "We go give our statements," she said. "We go to a hospital, and you get checked, and I get checked, and the babies get checked." She paused. "And then we figure out the rest of it." "That's not a plan," Sienna said. "No," Cara said. "It's a starting point." The first patrol car came through the tree line, its light sweeping across the gravel and the house, and both of them standing there, illuminated for a moment in red and white, and then in dark again as the light moved on, and Cara stood in the dark with her hand on her son and waited for whatever came next to arrive and find her standing up. The patrol car's door opened. A deputy got out. He looked at the scene, the SUV, the second car, the two women, the bag, and he looked at Petra, who held up a credential, and he looked back at Cara, and he said, "Ma'am, are you injured?" "No," Cara said. "Is there anyone in the house who needs medical attention?" "There's a man in an SUV who needs his side looked at." She paused. "He's in custody, but he needs a doctor." The deputy nodded and reached back into his car for his radio. Cara turned to Sienna. Sienna was looking at her with those eyes that had smiled at her across an altar this afternoon, in what felt like a different lifetime. And they were not smiling now, and they were not cold either, and the expression in them was one that Cara thought she would probably remember for a long time, without knowing exactly what to do with it. "For what it's worth," Sienna said, "I'm glad you got in the car." "Cole's car," Cara said. "Whatever car, I'm glad." Somewhere on the lake, a bird called once and went quiet. The bag was in Petra's hands. Marcus was in the SUV. Reyes was in custody. The documents were real and accessible and enough, and the transfer would be frozen, and the names would come off, and it was going to take a long time and a lot of rooms and a lot of questions before any of this resolved into something that felt like a life again. But they were standing, both of them. And in 4 months, give or take, they were each going to have a child who did not know any of this had happened, who would arrive into whatever world their mothers managed to build out of tonight. And that was the one non-negotiable. The one thing that had been true at the altar and in the car and in the bathroom and on the gravel and was still true now, at the end of the worst day Cara Whitfield had ever lived through. The deputy was talking into his radio. Petra was walking toward the house. The lake sat behind everything, flat and dark and patient, the way water always is. And from inside the gray SUV, through the closed window, Marcus Vane looked out at the property he'd driven 90 minutes to save and found it already gone. And the expression on his face, the last expression Cara would ever see on it, in the sweep of the patrol car's light, was not anger, and was not calculation, and was not the reset she had spent 2 years mistaking for peace. It was the expression of a man who had finally run out of road. That was the last thing Cara carried with her out of that night. Not the gravel under her feet, not the cold off the lake, not the red-white sweep of the patrol lights, but that face in the window of the gray SUV, stripped of every layer he'd spent 35 years building, and what was underneath was not a monster and not a victim, but simply a man who had made choices and had arrived at their destination. She turned away from the window. She didn't look back. The county hospital was 20 minutes from the lake house, a small regional facility that smelled like every hospital smells, antiseptic and recycled air and the particular staleness of a building that runs all night. They took Cara and Sienna into separate exam rooms, which was probably protocol but felt, after the last 6 hours, like a strange kind of solitude. Cara sat on the exam table in the borrowed sweatshirt and the leggings, and let a nurse with gray-streaked hair and efficient hands take her blood pressure and her pulse and ask her the standard questions about pain and dizziness and when she'd last eaten, which she couldn't remember, which turned out to be a problem, so they brought her crackers and apple juice in a small paper cup, and she ate and drank both while staring at the wall. The OB on call came in. Young, tired, with the particular competence of someone who has been tired for so long it's become their baseline. She did the ultrasound with the portable machine, and the screen showed him, her son, his heartbeat a steady, rapid flicker in the gray-white image, his profile clear, one fist raised near his face in the posture she'd seen before, the posture that reminded her every time of someone bracing for something. "Good strong heartbeat," the doctor said. "Good movement. Everything looks stable." "Okay," Cara said. "You've had significant stress today. I'd recommend rest and monitoring for the next 24 hours. Do you have somewhere to go?" She thought about her apartment, about the nursery Marcus had helped paint a soft sage green on a Saturday in February, both of them with rollers, him getting paint on his shirt and laughing about it, and her thinking, this is real, this is the foundation of a real thing. "I'll find somewhere," she said. The doctor made a note. "Is there someone who can be with you tonight?" Tessa, Cara thought, who she still hadn't reached, who had sent coordinates and a warning and then gone silent. "I'll find out," she said. The doctor left. Cara sat in the exam room with the crackers and the apple juice and the sound of the hospital doing its quiet overnight work around her. And she let herself be still for the first time since the bridal suite mirror, since Tessa's hands in her hair, since the version of this day that had existed before she looked through the lobby glass and saw a woman in green stepping out of a car. She was still sitting there when the door opened and Tessa came in. She looked like she'd been through something. Her hair was loose and she was missing an earring, and there was a redness around her eyes that wasn't crying exactly, but was adjacent to it, the redness of someone who has been holding their face very carefully for several hours. She came in and stopped 2 feet from the exam table and looked at Cara and said nothing. "You're okay," Cara said. "He didn't touch me." Tessa's voice was careful. "He figured out what I'd done. I think he saw me with his phone. But he didn't. He just left. He drove away." She swallowed. "I've been trying to get to you for 2 hours. Nobody would tell me where you were. Petra's contact finally—" "Come here," Cara said. Tessa came. She sat on the edge of the exam table beside Cara, and Cara put her arm around her, and they sat like that without saying anything. 2 women in a hospital at 2 in the morning, one of them in a borrowed sweatshirt and the other missing an earring, and the baby pressed against Cara's ribs, steady, steady, steady. "I should have told you," Tessa said, "about Sienna, when I found out." "Yes? I thought I was afraid it would. I didn't know what it would do to you, the baby, the stress. I kept telling myself I'd find a better moment. There wasn't going to be a better moment. I know that now." "Tessa." Cara let out a slow breath. "You came tonight. You answered the phone. You went into that apartment and got what I needed, and it cost you something, and you did it anyway." Tessa's jaw was tight. It wasn't enough. It was part of what was enough. Cara pressed her arm a little tighter. We'll deal with the rest. Not tonight. Tessa nodded. She was holding herself very precisely, the way people do when they're afraid that if they stop holding themselves precisely, they'll fall apart. And Cara understood that. She was doing the same thing. They were all doing the same thing. It was the only structural option available. They sat until Tessa's breathing slowed. Then Cara said, How's Sienna? She's down the hall. They checked the baby. Everything's okay. Tessa paused. She asked about you. Cara nodded. Is that weird? Tessa said. That she asked. I don't know what's weird anymore, Cara said. I'm using a different scale. They kept Cara overnight. Standard precaution, stress, and elevated blood pressure, and the fact that she hadn't eaten properly, and had spent 6 hours in a level of physical and psychological activation that the body doesn't easily metabolize. They gave her a room with a window that faced east and a bed with sheets that were clean and flat and impersonal, and she slept in them with the depth of someone who has used up every reserve they had. She woke at 6:15 to early light and the sound of the hospital shift change. She lay there for a few minutes and took inventory. She was alive. The baby was alive and had been verified as such by a qualified professional with a machine. The bag with Marcus's documents was in federal hands. The transfer on the 30th had been frozen by an emergency filing that Petra had submitted at 1 in the morning with the help of her contacts and a federal judge who had apparently been reachable at midnight and not entirely pleased about it, but persuadable. Reyes was in custody. Marcus was in custody. Vargas, she found this out later that morning from Petra, who called at 7, had been apprehended overnight at a motel 18 miles from the city, brought in on a separate warrant that had been waiting for him under a different name. She lay in the hospital bed and arranged these facts. None of them felt like victory. They felt like the aftermath of a structural collapse. The building was down, and you were standing in the rubble, and you were intact, and that was not the same as winning. That was just surviving, which was its own thing, smaller and larger simultaneously. At 8 o'clock, Petra came. She sat in the chair beside the bed with a paper coffee cup and the particular look of someone who had not slept but had moved through the night with sufficient momentum that they hadn't needed to. She looked older than she had at the apartment table. She looked honest. Federal jurisdiction confirmed on the Rello case, she said. Your name and Sienna Drake's name have been formally flagged as non-culpable third parties in the filing investigation. That's not the same as legally cleared. That's going to take weeks and the cooperation of Marcus's testimony. But it means no one is coming for you in the next 72 hours for anything related to the accounts. Marcus's testimony, Cara said. He's cooperating, as of 4 this morning. Petra held the coffee cup with both hands. He has a lawyer. The lawyer communicated to my federal contact that Marcus is prepared to provide full testimony on the Rello consortium structure, the money movement, and Reyes's role as a double asset, in exchange for consideration on his own charges. Consideration, Cara said. He's not walking away from this. He moved $7 million out of accounts he wasn't authorized to move it from. He built a fraudulent shell structure with 2 women's names on it. He's facing significant federal charges. Petra looked at her directly. But he's also handing them a case against Rello that they've been building toward for years. His lawyer will argue for reduced sentencing. That argument may have some merit. She paused. I want you to hear that from me rather than later from a news source. Cara looked at the window. The early light was doing something particular to the eastern sky. That thin gold that comes before the sky fully commits to morning. Harlan, she said. Stable. He was moved to a private facility overnight. His people handled it. Petra turned the coffee cup in her hands. He wants to meet with you when you're ready. He says he has documentation of his own, records of his attempts to reach you in Sienna going back 6 weeks. It corroborates the timeline. He was trying to stop it, Cara said. In his way. For his reasons. Petra was careful. Harlan Vane is not a clean man, Cara. He's spent 40 years in the edges of things that don't bear close examination. His concern for you was genuine, I believe, but I also believe it was partly about limiting his own family's liability. Both of those things can be true. I know. I just want you to go into any future meeting with him with that. I will. She looked back at Petra. What about the safe? The contents? The originals Marcus retrieved establish his name as the beneficial controller of the entire structure. His name, his accounts, his directives. Your names as nominal beneficiaries, he added, without your informed consent. It's clean. Petra allowed herself one small thing that wasn't quite a smile, but lived in the same neighborhood. It's very clean. Marcus kept meticulous records. I think he intended them as leverage against Rello, and instead they're going to be used against him. He was thorough about the wrong things. The coffee cup turned in her hands again. Sienna is being discharged this morning, Petra added. She's given a full statement. She's been cooperative, and I think genuinely so. A pause. What happens between the two of you after today is not my business. But for the purposes of the case, you're on the same side of the table. We were always on the same side of the table, Cara said. We just didn't know it. Petra stood. Rest today. There will be more statements needed this week. I'll coordinate through your lawyer. I'm going to refer you to someone good. Someone who handles exactly this kind of case and is not connected to anyone Marcus knows. Okay. And eat something real today, not crackers. Okay. Petra left. The door whispered shut behind her. The light in the window moved as a cloud crossed somewhere above it, and Cara watched the light change and breathed and let the silence of the room do what silence does when you finally stop fighting it. They discharged her at 10:30. Tessa was there with clothes, real clothes, Cara's own, from the apartment, which meant Tessa had gone back there, which Cara didn't ask about because some things you file under debt already acknowledged and leave alone. She changed in the hospital bathroom. Jeans, a soft gray top that fit over the bump, flat shoes. She braided her hair in the mirror, which took longer than it should have because her hands were still not entirely reliable, a fine tremor that came and went, the body's invoice for the previous 36 hours. She looked at herself when she was done. Same face, different behind the eyes. She thought about the bridal suite mirror, the veil, the $6,000 dress that was in the back of Tessa's car in some configuration of folded and abandoned. She thought about the woman she'd seen in that mirror and tried to calculate the distance between that woman and this one, and found that the distance wasn't as great as it should have been, that she was still largely herself, which was both a relief and a strange kind of grief, because she had half expected to emerge from a night like this as someone unrecognizable. And instead she was just Cara, 4 months pregnant and tired down to the cellular level and still standing. She put the small blue teddy bear in her jacket pocket. She went out. Sienna was in the corridor. She was dressed. Dark jeans, a black top, her hair back in a low knot that was practical rather than composed. She was standing with her own discharge paperwork in one hand and a phone in the other. And when she saw Cara, she stopped, and they looked at each other in the corridor of a county hospital at 10:30 in the morning. And the corridor was ordinary. Linoleum, fluorescent light, a cart of supplies going past. And what was between them was the most honest thing Cara had experienced in longer than she could accurately calculate. "Your baby okay?" Cara said. "Fine." Strong heartbeat. Sienna's voice was carefully level in the way it had been in the hotel room. "Yours?" "Same." They stood. "I have a car coming," Sienna said. "A friend. Someone Marcus doesn't know." She said that last part as a point of information, not defensiveness. "You need a ride anywhere?" "Tessa's here." "Okay." Sienna looked at the discharge papers, looked back up. "I don't know what comes next. In terms of the case, the statements, all of it. I don't know how much of it overlaps with you." "Some of it will. Petra will coordinate it." Cara paused. "We'll probably have to be in the same room sometimes." "That's fine," Sienna said. "Yes," Cara said. "It is." They were quiet again. The supply cart went past a second time, going the other direction. "I'm going to stay in the city," Sienna said. "I have an apartment. Small. It's mine. Just mine. Nothing Marcus touched." A pause, the first hesitation that wasn't armor, but something more specific, something more like vulnerability, which in Sienna Drake looked like standing very still and choosing words with extreme care. "I don't have family nearby. Most of my people they were Marcus's people too, So, she stopped. Cara understood what she was not quite saying. I'm going to be looking for a new OB, Cara said. Mine was through Marcus's insurance. I'll need a referral. She held Sienna's gaze. If you have someone you trust, I'd take the name. Something in Sienna's face shifted, small and real. I'll send it to you, she said. Okay. Not friendship, not absolution, something more durable and stranger than either. Two women who had been positioned as enemies and had spent a night discovering they were something else entirely, something that didn't have a clean name yet, and might not for a long time, and would have to be built slowly and honestly if it was going to be built at all. Sienna's phone buzzed. She looked at it. My ride. Go, Cara said. Sienna moved toward the exit. She stopped once, halfway down the corridor, and turned back, and there was something in her face that was the last unguarded thing, the last bit of the altar burned away. For whatever it's worth, she said, he did talk about you. He talked about you the way he didn't talk about other things. She looked at the floor briefly, then back up. I don't know what it means. I've been trying to figure that out, and I can't. She paused. I just thought you should know. Cara looked at her. It means, Cara said slowly, that he was capable of caring about someone and still doing everything he did, which is the part that makes all of it harder, not easier. She met Sienna's eyes. I know. I've been trying to figure it out too. Sienna nodded once. Then she walked to the exit and pushed through the door, and the morning light took her. Cara stood in the corridor for a moment. Then she went to find Tessa. The weeks that followed had the texture of difficult work. Not dramatic, not cinematic, but grinding and procedural and often exhausting in the particular way that legal and bureaucratic processes are exhausting. The repetition, the paper, the hours in rooms with lawyers and federal representatives who asked the same questions in different orders and needed the same answers documented in progressively more specific ways. She found a lawyer, Petra's referral, a woman named Sung who was 43 and direct, and had a practice built entirely on cases where financial instruments had been used to implicate people who hadn't understood what they were signing. Sung had read the documents from Marcus's safe on the first day and said, with the clinical satisfaction of someone whose entire professional life had been preparation for exactly this. He made it easy. He was too careful. Everything is labeled. The transfer on the 30th was formally blocked by federal order on the 28th. Cara was in Sung's office when it happened. Sung got the confirmation on her laptop and turned the screen, and Cara read the words and felt something move through her that wasn't joy and wasn't relief, but was the specific sensation of a weight being removed that you'd carried so long you'd forgotten it was separate from your body. Marcus's testimony was delivered over 3 sessions in the 3rd week. Cara wasn't present for it. She didn't ask for transcripts. What she knew was what Sung told her. He was thorough, he was detailed, he provided dates and names and account numbers, and the internal logic of the structure with the same meticulousness he'd applied to building it because Marcus's real skill had never been improvisation. It had been architecture, and now that architecture was being used to dismantle itself. The federal case against the Rello Consortium expanded significantly as a result. Reyes faced charges in 2 jurisdictions. Vargas, who had operated under 4 different names, was identified through the evidence as connected to a pattern of activity going back 8 years. Harlan Vane met with Cara in the 5th week. It was at a restaurant, not the brownstone. Neutral ground, his suggestion, which she had accepted as a sign that he understood something about the balance of obligation. He was out of the private facility, moving carefully, but moving. He looked like a man who had survived something and was accounting for it. He didn't apologize. She hadn't expected him to. What he did instead was place an envelope on the table and slide it toward her and say, "Legal trust. Set up before today. Irrevocable. For the child." He looked at her. "Not from Marcus. From me. There's a distinction, and I'd like you to understand it." She looked at the envelope. "Why?" she said. "Because I spent 40 years building things in the wrong direction, and I am running out of time and road to correct it. And because whatever Marcus is and whatever I failed to make him into, that child is not responsible for either fact." He held her gaze. The eyes that she'd first seen calculating, then careful, were something else now. Still not soft. Nothing about this man was soft, but honest in the way that only becomes possible when someone has lost enough to stop protecting themselves from honesty. You don't have to take it. She looked at the envelope. She thought about the nursery in sage green, about the name they'd half decided on, not told anyone, held between them on a Thursday night over takeout containers, laughing about the alternatives, about the appointments, the ultrasounds, the Tuesday when she'd heard the heartbeat for the first time and Marcus had been there and his face had done something unguarded and real. About all the real things that had been inside the architecture of everything false, and how they didn't cancel each other out, and how you just had to hold both of them and keep going. She took the envelope. There will be conditions, she said. Name them. No contact from Marcus directly, ever. If he wants to know about the child, it goes through my lawyer. She paused. And if you want to be part of this child's life in any capacity, it is on terms I set and they are non-negotiable and they can be revoked. Harlan Vane looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, Agreed. She put the envelope in her bag. They finished the meal with the careful conversation of people who have established a functional arrangement and don't yet know if it will become anything else. It might not. That was okay. Not everything that begins in the worst circumstances grows into something better. Some things stay functional arrangements, and functional arrangements are not nothing. She drove home afterward, her own car, reclaimed from the Harlow House parking garage 3 days after the lake house. It had been sitting there in the dark, a parking ticket tucked under the wiper, which had struck her as the most ordinary thing imaginable, and had therefore been the thing that finally made her cry, standing in the parking garage with a parking ticket in her hand. Just that. Just the absurd mundane persistence of civil infrastructure. She'd cried for about 4 minutes. Then she'd gotten in the car and driven. So, the apartment was different now. Not structurally. Same rooms, same light, same view of the street below. But she'd spent 2 weekends going through it with the specific focus of a woman clearing a space of someone else's residue. Not bitterly, not dramatically, methodically. Things that were his went into boxes. The boxes went to a storage facility managed by Sung's office for evidentiary purposes, and then, when that process concluded, to a donation center. The nursery she'd left alone for the first week, standing in the doorway and not going in, and then one morning she'd gone in with a roller and painted the walls a different color, not to erase the afternoon they'd spent with paint on their hands, but because the room needed to become something that was entirely hers and the baby's. And sometimes you change the color not out of anger but out of necessity, the same way you open a window because the air has gone stale. She chose yellow. A warm, specific yellow, not aggressive, not cheerful in the way that feels performed, just light. Tessa helped her paint it. They did it on a Sunday, both of them in old clothes, music playing from a phone propped on the windowsill. They didn't talk about Marcus. They talked about other things. Tessa's sister's new apartment, a book Cara had been reading, whether the restaurant on the corner had gotten worse, or if they'd just been ordering the wrong things. The ordinary territory of two people who have known each other long enough to live comfortably in the unremarkable. At one point, standing on the step stool to reach the corner near the ceiling, Tessa said, "How are you, actually?" Cara considered the question the way she'd learned to consider it, honestly, with some lag, not reaching for the first acceptable answer. "Some days are okay," she said. "Some days something reminds me of something and it's like stepping on something in the dark. But the floor is still there." "That's something." "It's enough for right now." Tessa climbed down from the step stool. She looked at the yellow wall. "It's a good color." "I think so." He'd have hated it. She said it without malice. Just observation. Cara looked at the yellow. Marcus had preferred neutrals. He'd said once that color in a space was a kind of noise he didn't need. She'd agreed at the time. She'd agreed with a lot of things over time in the slow accumulated way that people in relationships adjust themselves to fit the shape of another person. And the adjustment is so gradual that you don't feel it as loss, you feel it as compromise. Until one day you're standing in a parking garage holding a ticket, and you realize the shape you've been holding has been someone else's outline all along. "He would have," Cara said. She put the roller back in the tray and looked at the room. The yellow walls and the light through the window, and the small dresser they'd assembled on a Saturday in January, still there, still good, a piece of furniture that was just a piece of furniture now, neutral, functional, hers. She'd found a crib. Her own choice this time. She'd driven to the furniture store by herself on a Wednesday afternoon and walked the floor slowly and chosen the one she wanted, which was plain and solid and not the one Marcus had selected and put a deposit on months ago. She'd sat in the parking lot of the store after loading it into the car and called her mother in Phoenix and told her everything. The whole of it, start to finish, which she hadn't done yet, which had taken 45 minutes and left them both exhausted, and her mother saying at the end, "When were you going to tell me?" "I was trying to figure out what to tell you. You could have told me all of it." "I know that now. You always try to handle things alone." "I know that now, too." Her mother flew in the following week. She stayed for 10 days, and they were not easy days in the sense that comfort is easy, but they were good days in the way that honesty is good, the way that having someone who has known you your whole life present in your space is good, grounding you to the version of yourself that predates all the versions that other people shaped. Her mother repainted the second bathroom, a color she liked better without asking, and Cara didn't say anything because it was her mother and also because the color was fine. Sienna sent the OB referral 3 days after the hospital. A doctor named Reeves, women's health practice on the north side, good reviews, no connection to anything Marcus had touched. Cara made an appointment. They texted occasionally after that. Not often. Not about anything adjacent to Marcus or the case or the night at the lake house. Practical things. The OB, a recommendation for a prenatal yoga class, once a question about insurance that Sienna thought Cara might know the answer to, and Cara didn't, but found out and sent back. The texture of two people who are in cautious, early orbit around each other, testing the gravity, not yet sure what they're building, but not building it either. In the 9th week after the wedding that wasn't, on a Thursday afternoon with the kind of April light that the month had withheld from the ceremony and was now delivering in full, Cara sat in Dr. Reeves' office and listened to her son's heartbeat through the Doppler machine, that rapid small percussion. And this time she was alone, and that was different from all the other times. And she let it be different, and she listened. 152 beats per minute. Steady, certain, unconcerned with anything that had happened or was happening or was going to happen. Just present. Doing the work of being alive with the entire commitment of something that doesn't yet know there's another option. She sat there and listened and let it be what it was, which was enough, which was more than enough, which was the whole thing. She wrote Marcus a letter in the 12th week. Not to send. Sung would have had strong opinions about that, and so would Petra, and so probably would her own better judgment. She wrote it because there were things she needed to say that weren't going to be said in any other format, things that didn't belong in a courtroom or a lawyer's office or a phone call with her mother or even a conversation with Tessa. She wrote it at the kitchen table at 7 in the morning, before the day started, with a cup of tea she kept forgetting to drink. She wrote for 40 minutes. She said things that were true and things that were hard and a few things that surprised her by being both. She said that she had loved him, or had loved what she thought he was, which may or may not be the same thing, and she'd given up trying to determine which. She said that she was angry, not in the hot immediate way, but in the deep settled way, the kind that would probably be with her in some form for a long time, and that she was learning to carry rather than be carried by. She said that she didn't want his ruin, specifically. She wanted accountability, which is different, and she understood the difference. She said, "The baby's name is going to be James." I decided. I'm telling you because you're his father, and that fact is not going away regardless of everything else. And he'll know it someday. And how I handle that now is going to be part of who he is, so I'm deciding to handle it honestly. He'll know you exist. He'll know what happened, in the age-appropriate version that becomes less age-appropriate as he gets older. What he makes of that is going to be his to make. She said, I got in Cole's car because I was out of options and terrified, and it was the only door open. But I think about it sometimes, the moment before I got in, and I think that even in the worst version of that moment, I was still trying to figure out how to survive it. That's something. I'm keeping that. She folded the letter in thirds and put it in the back of the drawer with the blue teddy bear, which she'd moved from her pocket to the drawer at some point. She couldn't remember exactly when, sometime in the first week when the coat had come off and stayed off. She didn't throw it away. She thought she might someday read the letter to James. Not as an explanation of what his father was, but as an explanation of what she had been in that specific season of her life. Not perfect, not all-knowing, not someone who had seen everything clearly, but someone who had stayed standing through the unclarity and had found the road by walking it. That seemed like something worth passing on. The morning light came through the kitchen window and laid itself across the table, and her tea had gone cold, and the city outside was starting up its day, which was what cities did, which was what days did, which was what everything did when given enough time and enough room and enough of the basic insistence to keep going. She picked up the cold tea, drank it, started the day.